Kia ora, te whānau. We're out here at Orokonui Eco Sanctuary. My name's Taylor, I'm one of the educators here. We're going to take you tonight on a bit of an adventure, spotlighting fish in our local Orokonui stream. And we're also going to tell you how you can do the same in your local stream, or even if your backyard, if you're lucky to have a stream there. So, the things you need to spotlight native fish are simple. A stream, obviously, a bit of nighttime, most of our native fish are nocturnal. A torch, the more powerful the torch, the easier it's going to be to spot native fish. And also, you want to bring someone with you. It's a lot safer to be out at night near the stream if you've got other people with you. Spotlighting native fish is actually pretty easy. Once you're out here at night with a torch, you can basically just scan across the pool slowly, using your light. The things I look for are little dashes of movement as the fish move around, but also things like clouds of sediment that the fish leave as they escape. Once you see something like that, slowly just sit there and watch and see if you can see the fish resting in any part of the pool. And once it's stopped, maybe then you can creep closer. Once you see what it is, there's a few different ways you might be able to tell what sort of species it is. If it's long and slender, it's probably a cockapoo species, a species of galaxid, which are one of our largest group of fish here in New Zealand. If it's more stout and hanging around near the bottom with a nice big round head, it may be a species of bully. Both these fish are amazingly beautiful, and there's lots of resources online to tell you what sort of fish you might be looking at. So a good thing to do might be to take a photo, and you could post it to somewhere like iNaturalist, or just simply look it up and see if you can figure it out what it is yourself. Awesome. Now we've just spotted a little banded cockapoo up in this little pond here. Now one of the coolest things about banded cockapoo and koaro as well is their fins are kind of sat on the bottom of their body, and there's kind of 4 of them, and so it almost is like how other animals have limbs. And so koaro and banded cockapoo are fantastic climbers, so they can actually climb up streams, up waterfalls. I've even had them in buckets before and they've climbed out of those, so absolutely amazing. But it does make them really hard to try and spot in streams like this, because you think they're in a pool and they just kind of jump straight out of it. Oh, look. Fantastic. Oh, look there. Oh. And look, just down from it, actually, as well, there's a big, look where I'm pointing. Just there, there's a big cockapoo as well. Oh, incredible. Absolutely incredible. So there was a tuna, an eel. Now, it's really hard from that brief encounter to tell whether it was a short fin or a long fin, our 2 species of eel. Both can get that big, but if it was any bigger, we would have to assume that it was a female longfin eel. They're the only types of eels that get truly big. What's remarkable about all of our eels is that when they get to a certain stage, instead of breeding here in New Zealand, which would seem to be the logical thing to do, they instead travel thousands of kilometres up to near Tonga to breed. And once they're there, they breed, they die, and those babies get sort of washed and swam all the way back to New Zealand, where they will enter streams and live the rest of their lives as eels. Now, their lifespan can be anywhere, for a female longfin, anywhere up to sort of 80 years, which is really remarkable. What awesome fish. So, we've been noticing a lot of fish, but we've also seen some other things that aren't fish. So I'm going to hand over to Sam to talk a little bit about some of the non-fish creatures that we're seeing in our stream.
This is a freshwater crayfish. In New Zealand they're referred to as koura. In places like Australia they call them yabbies. This one still has quite a bit of growing to do, and you can actually see that it's got a wee regrown claw. Right, it almost looks like a big fiddler crab. It's got a huge claw here, wee one here. So probably at some point in its life it got into a tussle, and this one's regrowing. Now, it's out of the water at the moment. They are a water-dwelling species. However, they can actually survive for quite a long period of time out of the water. So, although it might seem a bit mean, this one here we actually found crawling across the top of a rock. And that's quite an unusual behaviour for me and Taylor to come across. Normally, we just find them in pools in quite low numbers, but here in Orokonui, with no predators, they're actually doing super well. The water here is nice and clean too, so lots of them grow up nice and big in lots of numbers, and they crawl along the rocks and spend a lot of time on land. And it's purely speculation, but that could possibly be due to the fact there's no rodents or things like that to prey on them when they're out and about on the rocks. Another one of the cool critters we find around these streams is the glowworms, or puratoke, which means light bearer. They're quite a cool animal really. Although they're called a worm, they're not technically a worm. Really, they're the larval stage of a fungus gnat, which is a type of wee fly called Arachnocampa luminosa. It's given this name because it has a bioluminescent bulb inside its abdomen, and it basically turns that on, and it's this beautiful blue light. And so when other insects see that, they'll fly towards it thinking it's light, and then they'll get trapped in these sticky dewdrop, it's kind of like a web, kind of like a spider, and then that larvae will actually eat them. They'll grow up and then they'll fly off. Beautiful wee animal, but they have quite a sinister story.
If you look really closely at the sides of their bodies, one of the other amazing things about how these fish look, and it's particularly obvious in some species like koalo, which we have seen tonight, is that the sides of their bodies look like little stars, and that's where they get their name galaxids, because the sides of their bodies look like galaxies. Now, while we've been talking and looking at this one over here, I've actually just noticed that there's another one in here. Absolutely incredible.
Another one of the cool critters we find around these creeks are tokoriro, or cave weta. And they're actually really important in the diet of many of these wonderful fish species. You would think that the fish living in the water would probably eat mostly, I don't know, insects that live in the water, but actually a large portion of their diet comes from insects from the land. So we cave weta, like that one that I just showed you, that beautiful tokoriro, they'll actually jump into the water, something like a big kokopu will feel that vibration and it'll go in and have a bite. These are also another type of animal that are quite heavily impacted by rodents such as mice and rats. So by excluding those mice and rats, there's lots of insects, which means there's lots of awesome food for these kokopu and koaro and all these other beautiful fish to eat.
Oh, how cool. Two little ones here. There's a slightly bigger one here. There's that bigger one we saw before with that eel, and then there's that eel. This pond itself is chocker, let alone the stream. There's so many native fish here, and they're all really healthy looking. Now, if every stream was like Orokonui, we wouldn't have to worry about these fish, but that's just not the case. There's so many risks facing these fish. Firstly, pollution. So many of our native streams have lost their indigenous forest, that means their native forest cover. And now a lot of streams are a little bit worse for wear, and the water quality isn't as high as needed for these fish to thrive. And also, these fish have a life cycle that means they have to spend part of their time in the ocean. It means diadromous. It's a pretty cool thing to do, but it means that you can easily get stopped. So things like dams, our weirs that we put in streams, even poorly set culverts can interfere with the life cycle of these fish and stop them breeding. And that's really caused their decline as well. And also, remember when I said that some of these fish were whitebait species? Koalo, banded cockapoo, giant cockapoo, short jaw cockapoo, and inaka. They're all whitebait species. And this means that during the whitebait season, we can catch a pretty much unlimited number of their babies as they migrate up the stream. Now this just isn't sustainable, especially with all these other impacts on them. So it's something to think about when you see native fish. It might be better to admire them in the creek rather than on your plate. Well, whānau, I hope you have enjoyed hanging out with me and Sam while we've had our stream adventure here at Orokonui Eco Sanctuary. Now, you guys can go out there and explore your streams. See if you guys can find any native fish. What invertebrates are hanging out there? And if you do find stuff, let us know. Even if you have questions, you can send them through to us. Or, even better, make a video like the one we've made tonight and send it through to us to show us. We would love to see it. For more information about how you can go out and do a stream search like this, or where you can figure out what sort of fish are which, head to the description and see the links there. We'll have some more information for you. That's all for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. See you later.